welcome to Airport Loops Volume 2. So I just wanted to start off the video by showing you one of the new features in Airport Loops, capital S, Volume 2. There's a lowercase s that doesn't include the stomp switch recording. So if you see a big S, think stomp switches. I just wanted to show it in action. You can cycle through to different buffers if you want to, revisit one or something like that. And then you record using the middle stomp switch. There's another feature that's available, which is MIDI clock. It will sync to a MIDI clock that's only available with the stomp switch recording. Pardon me. So, if you use the push buttons aren't disabled. You can still use those even if this button is pushed for stomp switch recording, but the MIDI clock feature syncing to that is only available using the stomp switches to record. And while that's going on, the default behavior of these two stomp switches, let me bring my loops back in, but bring their volume down a little bit, show off another feature of Volume 2, which is a master level control. As I was saying, these two stomp switches, which have other functions when this isn't on, those functions are still available when the stomp switch recording isn't occurring. So the left still maxes out the reverb decay for like a nice momentary effect, and then the middle stomp switch will mute all of the active loops. The loops are muted with these buttons across the top, and it will unmute the inactive ones. So we can sort of use this as a quick way to shift between two sets of loops. And I already pointed out across the bottom on this recording page, or global page, I guess we'll call it now, there's some global controls. There's a master level, a master tape speed, so we can slow everything down. Kind of like on a 4-track cassette. Bring everything back in. There's a tone control. It's a little bit subtle. It uses the tone control of the effects modules, which isn't the most profound tone control that's ever been devised, but it can subtly reshape the sound of your loops. Now, I will say, I'm going to get to tape age in a moment. I'll get to it now. When tape age is active, the CPU jumps, and in the uppercase version of the patch, the tone control can click a little. I don't know if you can hear that. Let me turn the volume back up a little bit. Whoops. Whoopsie. Just recorded a new layer of nothing. Good work. I don't know if that's coming through, but there's a little bit of a clicking. So tape age, if you haven't used this patch before, is a type of FM distortion. It's basically noise modulating the loop speed, and it creates at low levels some sort of vibrato effects, but it gets pretty destructive as you push it. And I added another sort of make your loop sound shitty control, which is the corrosion, which you may have seen on some of my other patches. That's an AM sort of noise modulation distortion. So it sounds a little bit more like they share some similarities for sure, but it sounds a little bit more like, you know, like a really chewed up tape or something like that. It's about to give up the fight. And I'll point out that these controls that have correspondences on the other page, level, tape speed, and tape age, are additive. So, you know, for instance, when I push the level down real low, we couldn't hear some of the loops. That's because if we go to this page, one of them is boosted, a couple of them are boosted louder than the others. So, you know, this isn't something where it'll proportion everything and scale it. So if you have, like, you know, 2 loops that are loud and 2 loops that are quiet, it won't make the quiet ones quieter in proportion to how much the loud ones get quieter. It'll just cut the level overall. You know, and that may be useful too. You know, I'm sure there are people who can think of ways to use it. I was mostly thinking of it as just like a nice way to fade out your loops, but obviously you can also use it as sort of like a mute too. And that goes for the tape speed too. You know, it'll preserve, you know, the tape speed of each of the loops, proportionate to one another. And the tape age. Otherwise, everything is pretty much the same. I did change, and you may have heard this if you have experience with the tape age control before. I changed the scaling of it. So it used to be linear, and now it's exponential. So, you know, basically the idea was to give it a little bit more range of, there's some sort of like, right, that's the loop that I recorded over with nothing. There's some sort of like shimmery, like subtle vibrato things that happen really early in its range, and before, when it was linear, it just sort of zoomed right past those things that I often used. So it still does all the weird, like, hey, I made the loop sound like it's a thunderstorm thing that it did before. But there's more range where it's just doing a subtler sort of vibrato distortion thing to give you a little bit more room to work with those types of effects. But other than that, you know, there were a couple of like under the hood things that I did, but you know, you don't mess with a good thing. And like, you know, the people who are watching this, who are into this patch, I'm into this patch too. So, you know, like, I didn't want to screw it up. And again, the only difference between this and the lowercase one is, let me just record some patches real quick, or loops. So if I turn up the tape age on this, the global one that affects all of the loops, turn my level back up. If I start adjusting the tone, I won't get those clicks. So that's the only reason that I did that, because, you know, I mean, people definitely asked about stomp switch recording, MIDI clock, that sort of thing, and I'll, you know, put in the caveat, right? Like, MIDI clock means things will drift over time. Like, it's not, you can't have this sort of like freely manipulatable loop and do MIDI clock syncing, you know, where you can adjust the length and everything. So I didn't even get close to trying that, but you can start out with an initial loop that is, you know, 1 bar or whatever works best for you. And it'll, you know, if you just want to work with that material, you know, sort of isolated, it'll work that way. But that sort of thing isn't really why I built this patch. Like, I built this patch specifically not to have sort of like synchronized looping. So, you know, I wanted to make a version where I didn't have to deal with that, or any of the stomp switch stuff. It's just, you know, and then I can have a tone control that I can manipulate without causing clicks, which for me is important. You know, it makes it more of a performance control, and that's the idea behind the controls on this page, is that they're sort of like global macros. On this page you have a lot of like fine control over each of the loops independently, and on this page you can affect them all quickly. You know, like if you're using this as a performance tool, you know, you can fade out your loops slowly over time, you know. Or you can turn them all to crap with the tape age all at once, which is something that, you know, I've struggled to do in the past. So anyhow, that's Airport Loops Volume 2. It's not like, wow, what a dramatic change, but it adds some, like, I think some nice performance tools. Ah, crap, I forgot the other thing that I did with this. I may have to, because this is cool. So we've got a third stomp switch available, and what we can do with this, turn down this nonsense. What we can do with this is using the new track and hold feature of the sample and hold. what you can do with this is if you hold down this stomp switch and adjust the speed of one of your loops, it won't change until you release the stomp switch. Which, you know, I found that when trying to change the speed performatively on like a single loop, you get into this, like, you know, you get caught in between things. So you can sort of listen to the loop and like find that spot where it's coming to its crossover point or where it's between notes or something like that, and change the speed, or have a new speed queued up and then just release the stomp switch. So again, you know, the idea of like using this patch performatively was a big part of how I approach these changes. And that's Airport Loops Volume 2. A slightly noisier, slightly more performance-oriented version of, you know, the previous patch that I'm really happy to bring to the people who are, like, into this patch, because I know you're out there. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for checking it out. I probably talked longer than I needed to, but I'm excited about this one. I'm excited about all of them, but I'm excited about this one. If you've ever followed my Instagram or anything like that, this is a patch that I use a lot, that I found to be a really, like, novel composition tool for the type of composition I like to do, which is one that is sort of aleatoric or unpredictable, and built on interwoven, you know, temporalities and that sort of thing. So, you know, this is Airport Loops Volume 2, you know, with stomp switch recording if you want it, and, you know, like I said, MIDI sync, kind of, if you want that. And if not, everything else is the same on this version. It just doesn't have that stuff. So capital S, lowercase s. Again, thanks for watching, and have a good evening or morning or whenever it is when you watch this.